Welcome to the Music Wide Open podcast
The place for an honest and thought-provoking conversation
about music,
business,
life,
technology,
and the future,
for curious music enthusiasts.
and musicians seeking personal growth. I'm Ingolf Wunder.
And I am Paulina Wunder. Inevitably, everything gets faster and bigger. As a society, we seem to crave quick results and instant gratification. We are capable of putting a lot of energy into our work, yet we often overestimate our efforts. Our expectations are high. We want to be someone, to have a lot, and we want it quickly. There is this constant pressure, amplified by social media and the market, to show immediate and continuous success, to impress, to shine. We look for shortcuts to achieve that. And these shortcuts will be the starting point of this episode. The profession of a musician is a tricky one because on one hand it takes so much effort to reach a high level, we talked about that multiple times, that one could easily say there are no shortcuts. On the other hand, many young musicians want to climb up quickly and they look for all possible shortcuts. So how is that? Are there shortcuts or not?
Well, as you rightly state, in a classical musician's career, you have this kind of duality going on where you have a long build-up of a career, if you even have one, because you need to build up your technique, your other thing. It's years, and you usually spend your early childhood, not me, but most of the musicians, spend the early childhood building all that up, so that's a very long process. But then you have a short window to actually make a career, because the timings have to be right for you to appear on the market and be recognized and all that. And there are certainly shortcuts in some sense, and especially in these days, if the musical meaning on average is perceived not enough by people on average. So it means in the past there were more people that generally had the awareness of what this musical meaning is. So since that's not so much there anymore, there seem to be even more shortcuts. We discussed the reasons for that.
That's true.
in the past a lot. Speed increase, as you said, attention span decrease, technology, upbringing, all the things. And the result is a flattening, a sort of a sameness, a commodity feel. And because of that, I would say there are shortcuts, maybe even too many, in order to make a sort of a career.
There is way too many things just to impress,
Yes.
I would say.
And it's not being questioned. Like you can do whatever, it seems. And if the timing is right, or if you took the right shortcut, something is happening. I mean, the social media is the best example, right? I mean, you can...
That's true. And it's...
You could have a silly video that means nothing, but is clicked a lot, and you have a sort of an income already.
Or a funny video made by a musician, then you don't have to show your musicality too much, it just has to be funny.
Yeah.
Yes. There is this famous 10,000 hour rule, popularized by Malcolm Gladwell, which frames 10,000 hours as a benchmark for achieving world-class expertise in any field of practice. And some people believe that you just need to do something for 10,000 hours and you're a master. The magic is done. Not so easy. First of all, 10,000 hours of practice would take, let's say, about 10 years, more or less. It depends how much one practices. Secondly, this rule is a simplified version of research by Anders Ericsson, whose study actually on musicians, on violinists, showed that it's not just the time spent practicing, but deliberate practice specifically that drives expert level improvement. In other words, it's not about mere repetition, but about having very well-defined goals, strong motivation, and focused attention, which is crucial, and feedback from trusted mentors or teachers that targets the weaknesses. So all of a sudden 10,000 hours of such deliberate practice take much more effort, much more stamina and determination, and it's not so easy to tick.
Yeah. Well, generally, I mean, that triggers, maybe I mentioned that before, but Muhammad Ali, right, when he said, you only, basically, I'm paraphrasing, but basically you only improve once it starts hurting. And that with practice actually as well, with all kind of, if it's mentally hurting, because you have to overcome sort of an inner square box where you are trapped in, and you have to get out of it to get better, and this takes effort, and usually it pains, even mentally or physically, technically.
Well, nowadays people get, I feel, maybe I'm wrong, but this is my feeling, more and more sensitive. So they are more fragile in a way, and therefore it pains them, or they have pain.
Again, on average. Yeah.
On average, yes. Quicker, sure. I feel, than it was in the past.
That's a shortcut. I mean, in my humble opinion, there are no shortcuts to musical mastery, because it takes a lot of, how to put it, I'm just reading a book about left brain and right brain influence, and it's sort of like the right brain takes the whole of the universe, and you are sort of taking it as a full thing without the ego, without details and so on. And sometimes musical mastery, you really need to zoom out so much that it takes just time. Either you realize something because you have lived life, or you realize something because you have to meet the right person to tell you something that you haven't simply seen before. And so there are no shortcuts for that. So in other words, we skip depth, and the cost of that is always that the music loses as a whole. And this is very visible the last decades.
But also probably because young musicians, sorry to generalize in such a cruel way maybe, but I feel that they focus, going back to this 10,000 hour rule, maybe some people know about it, probably. They focus on this repetition, and they, at the same time, they forget to live. And if you don't live, if you don't experience life, then you have, frankly speaking, nothing to play about.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, music depicts human experiences, spirits, thoughts, emotions, all the things. And if you have no kind of representation in your own brain about such emotion or situation, then you simply cannot spot the essence of it. Because that's the point, especially in classical musical interpretation, that you kind of have to find the essence of what that phrase is about, and then feel it your own way and do it your own way, but without losing the essence that most probably the composer intended.
Yeah. So in other words, put emotions, but real ones, so that there's a certain kind of experience behind these emotions.
The point is this, that it has to be true, so it has to come from yourself, but it has to match the expectation, sort of, or let's say the most likely depicted emotion of the composer. And only if you feel that, and if you just don't think about it and just do it, then it will be authentic. But it has to be the right match in terms of experience or emotion, and this is difficult.
And it's a long process, because you have to live.
You have to live.
In order to play better, in fact.
So, whatever time really is, but it takes some distance. Or
somehow we as a society push ourselves toward an approach that says be the same as everyone else, only better. And I think that's a blocker, because it erases our personality, our individuality, and makes us forget what we truly feel passionate about. And then we tend to follow standardized behaviors and take standardized actions that ultimately, frankly speaking, at some point, put us in a position where we become unhappy, lose our motivation, and lose our joy. And these standardized actions may feel like shortcuts that can speed up our career development, but if they are not compatible with our personality or true desires, they become blockers instead.
That's true, especially in the times of classical music that we are now. Recognition is not necessarily, or unfortunately less than 50%, I would say, a proof of quality, but it's a proof of alignment with the system. Because people, due to this mentioned feel of commodity that classical music became, you have to sort of, it's safer to align with the system in order to do this, what other people, stakeholders, expect you to do in order to invite you or in order for you to climb the ladder.
Yeah, because they want to replicate the action,
Yes.
their own action.
And this is what happened the last decades. Therefore, it's a commodity now. And it wasn't in the past because people took risk. They were themselves. And then, of course, the more unique you are, the more of a danger you have to not being accepted by the system.
Yeah.
If you find a way to be accepted by the system, then you are better than everybody else because you are to recognize there's no other you. I mean,
Yeah.
you know. But if you don't, and that's where the fear kicks in, because if you are different and you are fearful of not being accepted by the system, so in other words, not make it, then many people just simply change themselves, as you said, to something that the other might expect. And this is
and it happens very often because I don't know if you remember or not, but we heard that ourselves. I suggested some specific actions to take, and we heard from some people from the business, yeah, but we've always done this way. We always do the same steps, you know? And it's like, I found it super wrong because, yes, the foundation of your actions might be the same, but then you have to look at a person in a very unique way because everybody's different.
If you have the time to do so.
If you have the time to do so and you have the...
And again, shortcuts. They're looking for shortcuts.
They are looking very much for shortcuts.
Yeah.
So therefore musicians as well are looking for the shortcuts.
Yes, because this is the same as you, when I talk about the commodity feel in classical music, which is very much so these days, in pop or other genres where you have new music, or at least sort of new, recooked and microwaved most of the time. But this is exactly the point. They even study the chord progressions and the melodies and whatever, how long it has to be, what it has to contain in order to be sellable.
You mean in pop?
Yes. And therefore also sort of, even if you are a composer that would like to make it, he or she also has to adhere to some sort of system, or you have to fit into a system. Therefore, even subconsciously sometimes, even if somebody is great, subconsciously you will already dumb down or do something just to potentially sell more or have a better career. And this is the danger, because then it's a spiral.
It is a spiral, and then in the end, I feel it ends with this, that we just repeat, and hope it leads us somewhere further. And it doesn't really.
No.
Because on the way, one is losing his individuality. And then, since one is losing this individuality and becomes, I don't want to say shapeless, but in a way you need to fit in. So most of the people, unfortunately, at some point are becoming shapeless, more or less. And then they call, like, I have to always smile, I'm sorry if it offends someone, but they're talking about my music, my this, my that. And
classical music.
In classical music, sorry, yes, in classical music. And I always have to smile, because that's not even your music. You're talking about your interpretation.
And your interpretation most of the time is a commodity, because it's the same as everything
else. No, it's not.
Few are different. They can then say my interpretation.
But it's okay, even if you would say that's my interpretation. Okay, that's your interpretation the way it is.
Yeah, because you played it.
Yes, but that people say my music. It's, well, one can say it's very philosophical, right? My music, so my emotions that I put through. But you have to then.
But it just triggered the reason why few people, and maybe not so few, hopefully, because the awareness is growing, but few people are aware of these problems that we are discussing here, is because it takes only, 10, 15 years to change a society in some sense. So if young people get to that age where they are exposed to something, then for them it's new.
Of course, yes.
And even if it's already dumbed down or made worse, for them it's still new, and it can be still something, wow, I've never heard that. And due to the fact that people have less time, shortcuts again, you don't question, and you just take whatever you are. And given the problems in early childhood music education, music education generally, have the reasons why things are as they are. It's just a sort of a natural
evolution.
Yes.
There is a book called Dark Horse, written by two authors. One is Todd Rose, the other one I don't remember, frankly speaking. And they argue that the real true success comes from prioritizing personal fulfillment over conventional standardized paths. So you need to harness your individuality to achieve both excellence and joy. And in order to succeed, one needs to know his micro motives. So this what drives you personally. And this is not about like, my motive is I love music and that's why I play. No, this is not a micro motive. You have to really know why you're doing that and what you want to achieve. To know your choices, so the opportunities that are fitting the most, your tactics for growth, and ignore the destination. In other words, focus on present fulfillment and not endpoints. Of course, it doesn't mean you can't visualize your final goals, but you should keep your focus on the present, on your personal passion, personal purpose. I stress the word personal because this is the key. There's no one size fits all. In nothing, actually.
In nothing, yeah. And that the focus on the present moment is also something we surely mentioned before, but basically there is only the present moment.
That's true, because even if we think about the past, we think about the past in the present moment, or about the future.
Or if you're in the future, you are in the present moment, or if you think about the future, you're also in the present moment. Yes. So, and this is also where we come to fear, right? We fear something, and if you live in the present moment, you don't fear because you enjoy the present moment, right? But it is, of course, very difficult, especially when you are young, to know your micro motives.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Like to really know what drives you.
Sorry to interrupt, but here I would like to remind you one thing, talking about young people and their motives. During some master classes, you sometimes ask people, piano students, why they are playing the piano. And usually they are very surprised. They don't expect this question because at first it sounds silly. But after that, they give a completely silly answer, like, because my parents made me play, or because I started very early.
Because I want to do competitions.
Or because, this I don't remember really.
Yes.
Because I said, that's very low, if that's the reason. So we're talking here about motives, and even micro motives. Very many musicians, and that's a fact, they don't even necessarily love playing. They're just used to playing. Yeah. And I think when they would ask themselves a question, some of them, do I really love it, or I just make myself believe I do?
I mean, when I ask this in masterclasses, I usually can judge the response only on an emotional level, because it's a tough and hard question.
So beyond the words.
Yes, because you see how the person reacts in the eyes or whatever, or in the,
exactly.
I don't know where it is, and then you know, okay, she knows or really wants to do it, or some, because even if the answer is, listen, I have never thought about it, or something like
that.
That
to be honest, at least.
But yeah, yes. But even in this reaction, how this is being said, you feel whether there is this what you, or I mean, how can I know what it is? But you feel if there is something deeper that yes. that you know, okay, that person will make it or not.
I definitely agree, because I witnessed some of these questions and answers.
Yeah,
and I had the same feeling.
Even if somebody says the right thing, but it's robotically yes. repeated, you know, okay. So this is really deep, because to be honest, I mean, if I look back to my life, the micro motives.
Okay, but you started to play the piano very late.
True, but even then I was not thinking about micro motives. It would be definitely good for as young as you are to think about these things, because I was always living in the present moment even without thinking about it, because I've even proof for that from my first teacher who when I said things about life which were quite deep for a 15-and-a-half-year-old or something. But I honestly, I didn't make it up. I just felt it this way. It has to be, you know, I believe that everything has its natural path, and that everything will be good, but not in a naive way, but that this is sort of a little bit like living in the present moment, that you know it's going to have this deep belief that something is going to be right. And in music as well, this deep belief, I would even say emotional, as I said, something that you cannot put in words, that you know that this phrase has to be like this. You feel it before you can even, this is quicker than thought, quicker than words, definitely, or deeper than words. So I think this is the musical meaning that definitely in the best pianists ever, or best musicians that I have heard talking about it, I always come back to this kind of essence that this is something, I know it's also a phrase, now many people use it, music is much deeper than words and can express things that words cannot.
Everybody repeats the same phrases, I'm so sick of that.
But again, you see that if you have a real musician talking about this, you feel it again in the micro energy, and in the energy that this is deeper, and this is exactly in the music. If you don't have the same feeling when somebody plays, it's not there. And we are, unfortunately,
only on condition that you have the receptors to actually spot it.
And this is a good
that's
point.
Another thing.
Because that's the next thing, like when you talk about shortcuts, why more and more shortcuts for careers are possible is exactly because these receptors or perception also in listeners dry up in some way. Not to offend any listeners, because the listeners have no fault whatsoever, because it's the stakeholders or the gatekeepers that put the music to the listeners that have the responsibility of what to put to the listeners.
And some do that very right, but the
some
majority...
do that very good. Yeah, exactly. But the point is, in the past, due to many things we mentioned already, we don't have to repeat that, that amateur music was made in homes and so on and so forth. There was bigger awareness or better receptors in listeners on average, again. And that's why saying, okay, that's why there were people queuing for tickets for 2 days just to hear that particular artist in classical music, right? I mean, we are far
now
away
they're
from
buying
that.
Online, and if the servers don't work, then they whatever.
That's right, but even
unless
some
something
of the
is
biggest classical stars, you often see that halls are not entirely full or just become full.
Although these are
on
the biggest
last
names,
day,
living legends, one would say.
Exactly, and those events that are sold out immediately, like the Chopin competition or something, they are sold out because of the event and not because of the music that is made.
That is true, because there are many people that just go to the event because it's cool to experience.
It's a cool thing, it's like Olympics.
Yes.
Yeah.
And some people visit Philharmony just for this occasion.
Yeah, so there's definitely some work to do in terms of awareness and.
But there's one more thing, and I think something that could speed a few things up. It's called metacognition. It's the ability to think about your own thinking. Some even call it the highest form of intelligence, but I think it's a bit overblown, because what is intelligence? There are so many kinds. But the fact is that it's a very advanced form of cognition. You are observing your mind in real time. You're not running on autopilot, but instead you are questioning your reactions and your beliefs, and you are noticing your thoughts. Because most people tend to defend their thoughts or reactions rather than question them or think about them or notice them. And metacognition is a powerful tool for self-growth. It can feel a bit uncomfortable because, let's face it, we like to run on autopilot. We don't like to analyze ourselves too much, even if we say we do. Here and there, yes, but I would say that's it. But it becomes a powerful tool only when applied all the time.
When you said that, what's triggered immediately, although I'm not aware of metacognition in detail, but in the book of Jill Bolte Taylor about the two brain hemispheres, she said actually when she lost her left brain hemisphere, she had a stroke and stuff, then she was not able to speak to anybody, but not able to speak to herself.
Yeah.
So that's what's living in the present moment is like, basically, because I was just thinking, metacognition, does it work if you cannot talk to yourself, even in the brain?
No, it doesn't. Because you need, we are very much, as a society, we are very much left side of the brain oriented, just because our society makes it this way, the point. And therefore some people focus only on this part, and therefore you need to, these two parts of the brain, two hemispheres, have to communicate and work the same way. So no, probably you cannot, because yes.
What triggered as well is that difficulty of depth in general, because if you start thinking about your thoughts, which is totally important and relevant, and I know you do that, and I do that too, as much as possible. Of course, we never know.
I was not even aware that it's called this way, you know.
Me neither. But
I just thought I'm weird.
But of course, this is something that is, of course, for many people probably not possible because of fear, because it's easy to come to a point where you don't know anymore what's true and what's made up and what's real, what you make up for yourself. And
when if you're weak, then you can get depressed.
Yeah, because because really the deeper one thinks, not that we are so deep, I'm always thinking about myself that I know nothing in that sense, because I always find somebody who is better at a specific knowledge base than I
Subject.
am. So this may be also connected, because I'm always thinking that I am not aware of the things that I don't know. And I think that a lot.
I'm not aware of the things that I don't know. I mean, obviously.
Yes, but not at all. You see, if you want to go somewhere where you have never been, you have to go to a place where you don't even know how it feels to be there. A stupid person, maybe I'm stupid because I don't know, a stupid person wouldn't know that he or she is stupid.
Yeah, of course, but I mean, we are going into philosophy here. I mean, Socrates already said, although his I know that I know nothing has been paraphrased, because we heard from a few Greek people actually that the original from Old Greek sentence was, the only thing that I've seen is that I haven't seen anything, which changes the meaning of this, what we know as, I know that I know nothing.
Well, exactly. And in that spirit, there are no shortcuts, because one has to have the time in order to think about things and be surprised by musical depth as a listener and musician.
Yes. Although, and here a personal anecdote, because you heard that from one person who said, you have a good profession because you don't have to think. So it shows what some people think about musicians, the ones that don't think really, you just play.
I don't really remember that. You see, I have a good brain. I filter out what's not important.
But that's sort of funny. So
it's funny.
Sort of funny.
But yeah.
So you don't have to think. But in fact, musicians have to think quite a lot.
Should, yes. And probably everybody, even the ones that you hear in the music that he or she doesn't think, would say he thinks a lot about music.
I'm sure, yes.
Because even if you practice alone technical stuff, and even if you just copy something mindlessly, you still have to think in order to do it. This is the problem. It's about the depth of thinking,
Yes, that's true. But it is definitely beneficial if you can analyze yourself, your thinking, and what you're doing, and it might lead you to happiness in the end.
Yes, I think because...
Or depression.
If you think too much, no. No, but I think, I definitely, of course, super biased as every human, because we live the lives we are built and we think we are right, and that's great, because otherwise we would kill ourselves.
Well, everybody thinks he's right.
Exactly,
no?
that's the
even if he does things that are not right.
That's the
so
self-defense.
We have cognitive dissonance here.
Well, that's the self-defense anyway.
So,
that would be a nice study. Very hard to do, because everybody can say anything in the survey, because you never know how it's inside of that person. But I think it's a sort of a self-defense that you always think you're right, because otherwise you wouldn't do it, even if it's the most stupid thing.
And in a way you have to be convinced that this what you're doing is right because it pushes you forward in a way.
Yeah, I think so. But as I say, in music, especially in classical music, because we are playing a music that is quite old sometimes and has been examined so many times and destroyed so many times and made wonderful so many times, that you need to think deeper. I mean, otherwise this art form will die at some point, and I never want that to be the case.
Okay, but talking about quick career, because there are some examples of people whose careers seems to be smoother than others. And in many cases they are indeed. I don't want to say that it's easy. It's not easy for anybody. But yet even these examples that we both maybe have in mind, they don't seem to be, I would say, grateful enough or really happy, although they had a bit smoother path to climb up.
Yes, that's partly what we already touched upon as to shortcuts, because the system rewards known things, and sometimes if the right markets are behind, then things go smoother. I don't think, and actually these examples that we have in mind show that, especially when they grow older and after they died, that happiness is probably not something that they radiate a lot.
No.
So in other words, smooth career doesn't build...
Smoother, let's say. I don't think there is a smooth career any...
Right. Smoother careers, let's say, don't build resilience, emotional resilience maybe. Struggle does.
That's true.
And it also is better for music usually, because those musicians that are more individual, I would say, gut feeling wise, they had a bit more difficult life than others. So in other words, you see the scars, the emotional scars, or you hear the scars in the music. Like you hear that it's more plastic, that the things are more real. And this has to do often with that careers are not that smooth. Either the times were difficult overall, wars or whatever, or not as now in the West, because there are wars everywhere. Yeah, so I would say short-term rewards is the smoothness, but punished, they are long-term emotionally, because then drugs come in and all these things.
Even
often.
Often, yes, but even if not drugs, then they are simply not very happy.
But I think it has
spoiled
to be...
and not happy.
Right, but I think it has to do with shortcuts as well, because again, this is totally gut feeling.
And I'm sorry to interrupt here, but and we know, or we heard of such examples, how it looks really, because such people then don't really appreciate what they have. They rather demand a lot. They don't see the big picture. It seems they don't see, or they lost the big picture, and maybe they never have seen it really, because it came sort of too easily. Even if not everything was easy, obviously, it's a lot of work. But
yeah. Well, what I want to say is totally based on gut feeling now, because I didn't study all these careers, but it seemed that in the past there were less shortcuts than now. Due to this musical depth that was more perceived, careers came more natural and without so much hype and shallowness.
I think hype there was always, just it looked differently.
And it was on a longer time span.
That's another thing. But the fact is that also in the past, so let's say several decades ago, there were people that had a bit easy, let's say they would be starting their career nowadays, they would have a more difficult time to climb up. And they are often not even aware of that, because they assume that, yeah, well, times are changing, but they don't think that they anyway got a lot.
Yeah, true. And that comes back to thinking deeper. And
here, frankly, it comes down to gratitude, you know.
Yeah.
And I think if one can be grateful for this, what one gets, not only musicians, but generally.
Is one then not happier?
I think so.
Yeah.
And more things are coming all of a sudden.
I think so too. And I think important is awareness that different musical personalities must have different paths, like really different paths, not just copy-paste. And that personal fulfillment often comes with it. One has to find the personal formula. And what we experience in our lives as well is that these formulas of careers are way too standardized, and therefore there are shortcuts that sometimes work and sometimes not. But it doesn't serve the music.
And happiness.
To use that
as well.
Yeah, exactly. As a musician, if you grow, your music grows. Like if you grow as a person, which sometimes is pain. But out of this pain comes happiness. If you learn from your mistakes and if you analyze again, right? If you analyze what you did and what you think and how to make it better. So,
which is a longer process, and again, people want to have everything quick.
So it's definitely growth over...
But in the long run, it pays off more.
Definitely. Definitely. And I think what's most important is that both musicians and listeners, and I'm always speaking on average again, need a perception upgrade. Because as a listener, if you have a wider perception of what music actually is or should be for humans, it helps artists because they can become better at the essence of music and make a more natural career because of that, and more personalized career. And as a musician, if you question more why, and again, if you think about your thoughts and why you're doing things and the emotional outcome of what you do musically, then you are better at communicating with music, and then you will touch more people, which radiates more happiness. Then, I mean, more happiness comes back from the listeners, and you're simply a better musician, in my opinion. And so that's a kind of a cycle. It always has to, what you do has to be perceived and come back to you as a musician, or as a listener has to come to you and you give back by you getting it, or, you know, it's always a give and take.
Of course. And in the end, it's unfortunately not a quick process.
No, it is not. And I think in the times that we are heading into, this will be a key hurdle to overcome for humanity. That we, despite everything becoming even quicker and even more standardized due to AI, it seems that it will become more personalized. But at the end of the day, it will, in the short term at least, before super intelligence comes in and stuff, will become more standardized in a way, because people will get the same responses based on some kind of average or some kind of, even if you have trillions of data points, there has to be an algorithm behind that decides whether it gives you a yes or no.
Yes. Or no.
And there will be more standardization in the short term, and we humans have to fight against that. So I'm here arguing for a human perception upgrade.
Yes. It can rescue us from having a so quick career that it becomes completely insignificant.